Hello, Sarah Sabin, executive and team coach here in the Leading in the Modern Way video interview series. And I am really excited to have with me here today Vicki Young, who is founder and creative director at Nalla Design. Vicki, welcome to the show. And would you like to briefly introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sarah. Well, my name's Vicky, as mentioned, and I founded Nala in 2010, and it's a strategic and creative branding agency. And what we do is we help clients whose marketing perhaps struggling to get the traction that it needs, and not the results that they want. And often it's not actually a marketing problem, it's actually a brand positioning problem. So we work with organisations around the world to help them break out of that cycle, and create a new brand positioning, and new brand visual identity for them, that's really focused on helping ensure that they're connecting to their audiences in a deeper way.
Hmm, that's really interesting. I just want to pick up on that point around it's not actually a marketing problem, it's a brand problem. How do you know the difference?
Well, often marketing is, compared to branding, marketing's quite a reactive way of measuring things. So people would say, bring out a new product and try and market it, and you can pick up the kind of response quite quickly on how well things are doing. And quite often, what happens is that you can end up plowing quite a lot of money into marketing, and it's not getting that reaction that you need. So you can tell quite quickly this campaign isn't working or this tactic isn't working. If you do that on a number of times across a number of different channels, if at the end comes, if they're all not working, you can then quite quickly make the distinction that actually it's not that particular channel or potentially that particular message because we've tried lots of things. We're not getting the kind of traction that we want. And then that's where brand comes in. Actually, is what we're saying, our proposition, what we're saying, what we do, actually really connecting with our audiences? And if the answer is no, then that's where people come to us.
Interesting. So, casting your mind back to 2010 when you set up Nala, was brand the first port of call for you when you were trying to get that business momentum going?
What is in was our own brand or
Yeah,
what first
yeah,
protocol? Well, yes, because my background is, I'm a sort of graphic design graduate. So I graduated and I worked in two really well-known and established London branding agencies. And then I moved on to create my own from there. So for me, I think having our own brand was definitely something that we needed to get right, right from the beginning, get really clear on what our messaging was. And so at the time, it was just me. Like many creative agencies, it tends to start off with sort of entrepreneur approach. And so I spent many hours scratching my head and getting frustrated because it was just me trying to come up with my own brand, which is really, anyone who's done that for themselves and their own company, it's really hard to be self-reflective.
mm,
So it was quite a challenge. But yeah, and the very name, even what to call it, um, was a massive quandary. And then the inspiration came from my dad, who'd unfortunately passed away just about 3 months earlier. And his name was Alan with two L's. So in homage to him, his name was within the business because Nala is Alan spelled backwards.
mm. Yeah, I love that. So the name itself is really meaningful for you.
Yeah, really meaningful, really connected, and I think really without inspiration from him, the business wouldn't exist really. I don't think it's sort of, in a weird way, I very much believe one door closes, another door opens, and I think, with him passing away, so suddenly, I think it just suddenly made me stop in my tracks, be like, actually, is what I'm doing something that's really fulfilling me? And is this something that I really want to do? And I was working in the time for a really well-known agency in the UK, one of the best in the world at the time. Um, but it was very long hours, very demanding creatively. And I was actually like, actually, I'm not happy.
Mm.
And so I stepped away from that. that role and reset on a different path.
Hmm. So, and I've had this kind of thing before where there is a traumatic life event and it helps people to reflect and sets them on a new path. And I think what I've discovered is that there are various ways that people come to entrepreneurship, but one of them is that sort of crisis of integrity where you're like, what am I doing with my life? Life is short. I owe it to myself to actually really give this a go now.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. And I knew I always wanted to have my own company, but in my head, I thought it'd be like, once I've got, some serious years behind me, maybe in my sort of 40s or 50s, I would go and set up on my own because I'd have enough knowledge by that point. Um, what that moment in time did is it sort of almost like collapsed all sense of time. And so I started a business in my 20s instead. So, and it's worked out quite well. So it was obviously the right time for me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and it's kind of, maybe in my 40s, maybe it would be look like a completely different business. Who knows?
Well, you'll never know, but I think, don't wait for things to be
Mm,
perfect until you start doing something if you feel called to do something at a certain stage in time.
definitely agree.
So let's fast forward a bit to today. What is one or a couple of things that are keeping you up at night currently and that you'd like to sprinkle magical pixie dust over in order to solve?
The UK economy.
Would be.
Um, yeah, I think one of the things at the moment we are seeing are some, I guess, how our clients or prospective clients, what they're doing, um, kind of really impacts how what we're doing and feeling. So at the moment, a lot of people would see brands as an investment piece. Some people see it as a nice to have. Obviously, I think very differently. I think it's an essential foundation. Um, but I think at the moment the market is relatively slow. Doesn't mean that inquiries are down, but it certainly means that people making a decision is a lot slower than it was even say sort of 6 to 12 months ago. I think the decision making process has really slowed down. And I think the whole economy, a lot of people are kind of waiting to see. So this time of year, we tend to see a rush of actually we want to get it done before Christmas because we want to start the new year with our new brand and we want to launch in January and it's a real focus. This year, we're seeing a lot more instability. So some people are still wanting to do that, but others are a bit sort of apprehensive and they said, oh, we're going to sort of wait to start in the new year. We just want to do a bit more research, or we just want to recalibrate our budgets. So yeah, if you have a magic wand, Zara, I'd love it for you to wave it over the speed of decision making. I think is the one, is that one,
I'll be
please.
done. um, well, we'll see if that magic wand worked, Vicky. But during these challenging periods and these periods of instability, which I think pretty much all entrepreneurs can identify with these cycles during the course of a business life, how do you deal with them both personally and to keep team morale up?
I think that's a really good question because I think naturally every business goes through it's well, if you can run a business and it steadily grows straight up, I want to hear from you because that's amazing. But most businesses have like natural ebbs and flows. So and for people that have been established for a bit longer, we've been through COVID. That was a challenging time too. Different reasons, different levels of support. But I always find that when kind of things get a bit more turbulent, shall you say, I think it's just really important to keep those internal communications going really strong.
Mm.
Um, we have within our company, we have sort of quarterly fixtures within everyone's diary that keeps everyone aligned on what the business is doing. So we have quarterly updates where we run through like where are we to our targets, what are we focused on this quarter, any top level messaging changes to HR through to studio growth, etc. All get announced kind of there. We also have a thing called retros, which a lot of people run these if they're project based, they'll run like a retrospective on a project, which is really good to essentially look back at the last quarter. How have we done? What do we want to do more of? What do we want to do less of? What's annoying people? Okay, right, and then how can we drive actions out of that so it feels quite proactive? So I think those things are a sort of a rhythm of the business anyway. But I find that particularly in times of turbulence, you need to kind of ramp up the reassurance factor
Mhm.
and be almost even more transparent on things like numbers, really transparent on things that are kind of niggles, asking the team for help. If there's things that so there's a particular aspect where I don't know, we're bringing in a new HR process, for example, it's a bit like actually can you all kind of lean in and help with this, or we're struggling with this, or you know, so and so's moved on and we need to replace them, but in the interim, we need everyone to chip in. And I think having that kind of culture where we're all there to support each other and we're all kind of there aligned to the same story, I think really helps in the kind of when there's a bit of a rough patch, just sort of bring everyone together and feel, even though things might look a bit tricky, and for us at the moment, it tends to be, as I mentioned, around this kind of slow decision making, even though people are sort of, that unnerves people in the team. I think because you've got that solid stability going throughout, it really helps sort of anchor and makes people feel like the business is transparent with them. There's no alternative agenda. There's a support there if you feel worried, etc. I think it's just really ramping up those internal comms.
Mm. And I really agree with that. So, it's about creating psychological safety, especially during times where things seem unstable and uncertain. And the problem is if you try always to paper over that or glitter over that, I don't know, I'm going with the pixie dust theme today. But if you try to just gloss over that all the time, people can feel that, people can start to see through it, and then you've got the rumor mill going and people are starting to get worried. But in those communications, there's a line to be walked between being very open and honest and also being positive about, here's the things that we need to do to get through this period. Because obviously, if it comes from a very negative energy, like it's all doom and gloom,
Mm,
etc., it can have a detrimental impact on morale.
mm,
Whereas if it can help bring the team closer together, like we're going to get through this together, it can have a motivating effect.
mm, I totally agree.
Mm. So, I mean, I think we've kind of touched on this because, when I talk about strong leadership, it's about how people lead through difficult times because, when things are wonderful and everything's working out, it's a lot easier to lead and motivate people. But I'd love to know more about how you personally define strong leadership and how you see it impacting the growth of your company.
Oh, I think for me, a strong leader would be someone that is always open to learning and adapting, um, and comes with empathy, um, so that you're an open person that someone can sort of feels like they can trust, and there's no sort of hidden agenda. Um, and has a sort of real sense of, I guess, stability, but willing to take thoughts on and ideas from other people and try them out, embrace them, like trust in the team, and be able to be like, okay, that's a good idea, or we've not done it that way before, let's try it. Um, I think being open to have that flexibility, yet still have the confidence in a almost like a bit of a stable structure, I think is the balance. That sounds like a really impossible thing to balance, but I think always learning is key. I think myself particularly, I love learning. I love going along to sort of entrepreneurial events where they're talking about various aspects of the business. I think particularly in small business owners like myself, I think you need to wear many hats. And I think it's good to be willing to learn about stuff that isn't even necessarily your job. Like if you've got someone in your team that specializes in something, I feel like you still need to have some sort of idea and interest in what they do, um, so that you can reflect that back with what the business is doing. For example, at the moment, I'm trying to upskill myself about SEO, and that's something that I haven't really needed to understand before, but we've got to a point in the business where that's something that I need to upskill. I need to have some sense of the top level kind of intricacies of SEO. I don't need to be an expert, but I need to have that kind of knowledge so that I can make sure that I can guide and lead that person well, in their role and understand their role and respect their role as
Mm,
well. So
mm.
I think it's about um, always being open to learning. Luckily, I'm someone that loves learning. That's fine for me.
Yeah, I mean, 100% agree with that. And actually, I think I would like to put what you said in an analogy because it's a really important point. And the point is around needing to know what's going on in the different functions of the business. So having a basic level of knowledge, even if you're not going to go out and become an SEO expert, but you don't need to. But the analogy is, for example, if you have an investment portfolio or even a private pension, you can outsource that to whoever without any particular due diligence, understanding nothing about investments, how they work, compound, anything like that. And then you can be disappointed in 10 to 20 years' time when you come and actually look at your statement, having kind of discounted yourself of responsibility, however, 20 years ago, and wonder why it's not showing you the numbers you want to see. Now, what I'm saying here is obviously you're not going to go out and become a financial expert, but when you have the basic level of knowledge, you know how to ask the right questions. You know more about what to expect. You know how to hold people accountable. And that is important when in that analogy context, but also as a business owner. If you don't understand sales, how can you hold people accountable to sales
Mm.
targets? If you don't understand the finances of your business, how can you expect to run a profitable business? So I really like the point you raised. And obviously, that means you are always learning and there'll always be more to learn.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think when I look back, I think that's something I've learned perhaps without realizing along the journey, that, when things have gone wrong and I'm like, oh, kind of left them to it, or eh, didn't quite, didn't quite understand the intricacies of their job, or the target was never attainable,
Mm.
but I didn't know that. And I now know that because I know XYZ about their job. So I think it's through kind of making these little micro, I wouldn't say mistakes, but observations on how could it have gone better. I think it's then that you learn, and then it becomes sort of, I think you end up sort of learning things through osmosis in that way, little
Mm.
micro things, and then being like, oh, and then it's not by chatting to you about it now that I'm like, oh yeah, I've kind of learnt that along the journey because of multiple small challenges, shall we say, along the way.
Mm. So you've mentioned learning through actually doing, making mistakes. How else do you tend to learn?
Well, I'm quite lucky in agency land. There's quite a strong support network of various, I don't know what you'd call them, groups, or like support networks. So there's quite a number of them. I'm a member of one of them called Agency Hackers, which is a sort of group of I think there's about 200 businesses now, all in the agency landscape, all of a sort of similar sort of size. And there's being part of that allows a guild group, which is a chatting platform that allows all of these people to connect and ask questions to each other. And it's got a very open, we all help each other out. And then we've also, the Agency Hackers group runs like events, so you can actually come together. And there was just recently an event about pipeline. There's one coming up about sort of more kind of ethical businesses and those who are kind of more B Corp. And so that having that network has been really great for me because I can kind of dip in and dip out. But there are others within. We're almost agency land is almost. We're quite lucky. We've got quite a few different other businesses that are set up with a similar thing that allow you to do like kind of more peer-to-peer learning and bring in experts and do talks and share insights and share learnings, which is fantastic. My other great go-to is just books, really. I recently read, or very behind the times, I appreciate, but I recently read Stephen Bartlett's book, The Happy Sexy Millionaire, and that was really interesting. Again, so I think although I'm dyslexic, so I listen, it's I'm kind of picking up these snippets all the time while I'm kind of commuting or in between meetings to kind of put my headphones on, listen to someone else, listen to podcasts. So there's almost this constant stream of like learning from others, which is really great to hear. And sometimes you'll be like something really resonate with you because it's a particular thing you're having challenges at the moment, and you'll get some real top tips. Other times it will just feel like like noise almost. So I think it's about keep keep digesting content around from other kind of entrepreneurs, business growth coaches, as well as there's lots of different sort of information out there to learn from, and then also obviously learning on the job within from your own team as well.
Thank you for sharing those tips. And I find quite commonly that the people that I speak to listen to podcasts and read a lot of books, and it's something that you can do in little bite-sized chunks. You can do it in 15-20 minutes. Doesn't take that long. There really isn't any excuse for not learning. Actually,
No.
especially nowadays.
Yes.
So, Vicki, final question. If you could go back in time and give one piece of advice to your 20-year-old self, what would that be?
Oh, I, I'm just, I don't know how to answer this without sounding really cliche. So I apologize. But I do really believe in saying that there's nothing stopping you but you. Um, so I do feel like a lot of the time it was kind of get out of your own way almost. The voice in your head that says you can't, um, you know, change it to be, I can try. It doesn't need to be I can, but like moving that mindset on. Because I think definitely in the early days, I mean, even today, there's a lot of, like, oh, can I do it? Um, you know, and kind of challenges that keep coming back, and it's about kind of believing in yourself. So it sounds really cliche, but yeah, that's what I'd say. Get out of your own way and believe that you can do it. And yeah, that would be it.
Well, it's good advice, because what's standing in most people's way is themselves to greater or lesser extents, but also, for people to understand that our mind is literally designed to keep us safe. So it doesn't like anything unfamiliar, doesn't like anything outside of our comfort zone, because it activates all our threat systems. So if you can get over that hurdle, if you can recognize your mind for what it is, then you can move forward a lot quicker, because you're just like, okay, cool, that's a thought. I'm just gonna move forward because I deeper me knows better.
It's a really hard thing to do, though, isn't it? I know I struggle a lot, and yeah, it's constantly trying to be brave, and know that it doesn't matter if it goes wrong. But I think, like you say, if our brains are wired the opposite way for sensible reasons, for running away from danger, back in caveman times, it's actually quite hard to overrun it. So I think constantly trying to, I don't know, reframe your mind is something that you almost have to constantly work at, I find.
Yeah,
And
it,
it's a nice thing to say, like, oh yeah, let's do it, but it is hard.
it is definitely hard. And even when you know it intimately, as I do, I still need the reminder as well, because once our feelings take over, once our emotions get to a stage where they're starting to drag us down, it can be very difficult to overcome that again. So, I mean, I would go so far as to say it's a lifetime practice, but
Mm.
doable.
Do
But
you do anything as like do you have a daily like ritual or anything to try and keep your mind on check? Do you like meditation or anything like that?
so, what I say to everyone is that you need to find the thing that works for you, because it
Mm.
is personal to you. So, I could say to everyone, you should meditate half an hour a day. However, if you cannot still your mind, then that meditation time might be better spent doing something else that is more likely to get you into an alpha brainwave state, which is a more relaxed brainwave state. And so, if I was giving a tip, it would look like understand yourself and understand the things that you need to do that put you into a better mind frame. And for some people,
Mm.
that's breath work. For some people, it's something more active, like kickboxing or dancing. For some people, it is meditation. For some people, it's a combination of different things together. But like you said about micro experimentation, this applies here as well.
Mm.
And ironically, it's the most difficult when you fall off the when you fall off the wagon when you really need it, because something has hit the fan and you're like, oh my god, panic stations. And that's when you really need to go back to those things.
Mm. Mm.
Ah, Vicki, thank you for this interview today. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Oh, me too. Thanks so much, Sarah. It's been really wonderful to have a really good chat with you and learn some advice and tricks myself.
I interview myself at the end. Um, to my listeners, I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation as well. If you would like to take part in the Leading in the Modern Way video interview series, please do reach out to me. Bye for now.